to the show. This is The Force Always. My name is Diz, aka David Zammit, and this is my trusty coffee because it is the morning here. Let's get on with the news, views, reviews, and interviews. News. First off, Jar Jar Binks has a comic book series coming out. Who's Jar Jar Binks? One of the most hated characters in the whole of Star Wars. Now, putting my hand up here, I never hated Jar Jar Binks. I, in fact, told the actor Ahmed Best that I thought his character was more normal in the Star Wars universe than Darth Maul with a painted red face that looked like a crazed basketball fan when I initially saw Episode 1's promotional material coming out before the release of Episode 1. That was just a bit of news right there. So Jar Jar Binks is going to have a comic book series. It's actually going to incorporate Ahmed Best as the Jedi that he played. He played a very, very small cameo as a Jedi, only a couple of years ago. But he also played Jar Jar Binks back in the early 2000s and 99 or whatever it was. And really brought that person to absolute brinks of hell. I spoke to him, as I said just before, and I was quite emotional with the guy because I said, you know what, buddy, you are a valued person in life. Just keep rocking. Anyway, that's so Jar Jar Binks, and it will be the tales of a Jedi and Jar Jar Binks together somehow. But it's going to be written or co-written by Ahmed Best, which is even better. So not just a fun story, but a significant interconnected type story where reality meets fantasy in a comic book series. Anyway, so that's one piece of news. The other bit of news is that we get a real first HD image of Baylan, who was in the last season of Ahsoka. That's the live action series of Ahsoka that's on Disney Plus. Season 2 will be coming out sometime next year. Baylan, the actual actor, and I can't remember his name like I always do, like not just him, anyone. He was one of the highlights of Ahsoka, and he sadly passed away in real life. Then Star Wars was left with what are we going to do? So they've just recast him. And personally, the look of this new person looks amazing. This is the closest image I've got to HD, whether it's HD or not. I'm doing my best here. And yeah, so he looks amazing. So it's a really good little introductory to what Baylan, who was not really fully explained, but lent himself more to the dark side than the Jedi. But he was definitely an interesting character in Ahsoka, and we left his character in the last season looking upon the hills, and a particular thing in Star Wars which is a bit too complex to explain right now, but it was the family, the daughter, the son, and the father. It's a very interesting story, which really happened in the Clone Wars animated series. Anyway, so this is our first sort of real HD image of Baylan. Baylan is the character name. The actual actor's name I don't know, and I'm surprised I remember his actual name as a character. But anyway, that's the news for this summer round. Let's get into views. Views is always my story idea. It's not to override the story that we've got already in Star Wars, the canon from 1 to 9, or even before or after or between that. I accept the story for what it is. Absolutely, I accept the story. And that's not taking it, taking it, lightly. There's always things in Star Wars we dislike or like. It's just life. But my story idea actually is connected to the comic book that was released. I should have added to the news. It was this comic book of Jar Jar was released or announced at New York Comic Con in the last coming days. That was one of the big announcements for Star Wars. And what I would like to see, I would love to see, excuse my hairstyle, look at it, it's the morning hairdo. It's the do for the morning. I'd like to see a character that has been there from almost the dawn of time in Star Wars, which is technically in our standards episode 1, and sort of carry on all the way through to the next episode, episode 10. I'm guessing, as I've said, I'm guessing that Starfighter is episode 10, but that's just my guess. If it is or isn't, I'll still like it and probably dislike parts of it or whatever it is. And one of the characters I think would be great, surprisingly, would be Jar Jar Binks. But I would somehow connect the fan theory of him being, the evil person behind the plotting of the downfall of the whole universe, which was sort of suggested him being Darth Jar Jar in a sort of comedic way of putting it. But I would, like to see his story become a little bit darkened forcibly, but still have good in him, sort of like Darth Vader, and still be somehow alive. Now, apparently in canon, he is dead, and that's a bit of a spoiler. He is dead. He ended up being some sort of street show juggler, whatever it was, and died. I can't remember how and exactly when it was, but if it's not hardcore canon, which I'm not 100%, it would be great to see Jar Jar again in a movie. It would really bring I'd say, tear to some people and joy to a lot of people as well. So that's my story idea. I'd like to see a character, not necessarily Jar Jar, but a character that's been there since the dawn of time, carry through and discreetly gone on his business or her business and just still there. Another character I think could still possibly exist, even though he technically died, was Darth Plagueis. You can't, even though I don't like the whole sort of, death in Star Wars and coming back again, his story actually has not been told in the movie canon. This would be a great cherry pick of the extended universe and somehow dealt with carrying him into episode 10. But if not, a character that has been there but that we are familiar with, not an unknown character, but that we're familiar with and says, oh my goodness, it's that person or that alien or that droid or whoever. It would be great. That's my sort of rough story idea. Anyway, that is the story idea for now. Let's get into reviews. Reviews this time is actually, I better take another sip of the old coffee. Now, back in the day, there used to be toy shops. There are still toy shops around. Not so much here in Melbourne, Australia. Maybe in America, but not so much here. There is a thing called Toy World, which has been here since the 60s or 70s. It's more for really younger kids, and I wouldn't say you get your hardcore collectibles in there. There's real designated type of toy type stores for that. Like there's one called Zing here. We did have a iconic one here in Melbourne called oh man, it started with him. Oh my goodness, it's Minotaur. That's it, Minotaur. It was in Elizabeth Street in Melbourne. Iconic pop culture store. Not just iconic, but it had really good stuff in there. Anything and everything you could find in there. But anyway, I didn't get this. I actually bought this from a proper store. It was can you believe this? Toys R Us. It was here in Melbourne, part of Melbourne called Frankston. So I got this particular exclusive Toys R Us. Us, Revenge of the Sith line. That's an exclusive Toys R Us, and it's a what do you call it? Holographic Yoda. Now, technically, in this film, he was not holographic, but the fact that you could get a Yoda like this, I found unique, and I said I've got to have that. And Yodas for me are just great, but they're also good resellable. But not that I really want to depart from this. This to me is, great. This is Revenge of the Sith line, as you see the packaging. It's an exclusive, as you see there. Toys R Us. That was a big department store. In fact, they had this massive one in Times Square that does not exist now. It was about 5 levels high. It had a Ferris wheel inside the thing. It was an iconic feature. Unfortunately, toy stores became less desired by people, so they closed it down, unfortunately. But anyway, that's a clue. This is a 10 out of 10. This is a prized possession. Revenge of the Sith, holographic Yoda that actually didn't take place. I usually buy stuff that is seen in the movie, but this to me was quite unique. I said, I've got to have this. Got it. 10 out of 10. That's the review for a Star Wars review that I've got this week. Anyway, let's get into interviews. Interviews is always at the moment about my favourite interviewer. I'm being, put in the corner with Michael from Werribee South. Now, this man has got a lot of time in his hands, and he comes up with questions, and they're quite interesting. And so, Michael from Werribee South, it's a part of Melbourne. I won't get into the whole what is it like there, because I've sort of touched on it before, and let's just move on from that. So Michael from Werribee South, his first question says, when Darth Vader is holding Princess Leia hostage, doesn't he know that that's his own daughter? Well, what Michael's talking about is in A New Hope, the original Star Wars that came out in 1977, Princess Leia confronted with Darth Vader. It was held hostage as a part of the Rebel Alliance, and he was sort of telling her the laws of the universe and la la la. It's a classic scene. It's interesting because you know what? He should have sensed it, but for some unknown reason, which we don't officially know unless you really dive into the archives of Star Wars, is that he was never made aware to the audience that he knew that this was his daughter. But at the same time, George Lucas didn't really have his whole complete story set in motion. He had the big basic picture, but there was a lot of things that he had not touched on in what he was going to do. For example, Leia and Luke kiss, their brother and sister. And that was sort of seen to this day as very creepy and unusual. But there was a lot of non-real detail to decision of particular storylines, characters, and I would say this is one of them. Why did Darth Vader not know that he was holding his own daughter hostage? Well, I think that was not completely sort of known to George, partly maybe to George Lucas at the time. We don't know. Anyway, so Michael's next question is, when you first watching Star Wars, I'm telling you how he's written this question. When you first was watching Star Wars, how did you know everything was called? That's how he's worded the question. It's, maybe typical from a Werribee South person, Michael. When you first was watching Star Wars, how did you know everything was called? Well, at the time that Star Wars hit, I was 4 years old, for starters. I knew nothing. A lot of people knew nothing. Star Wars started gaining momentum from probably I would guess, weeks before the release because of the epic look of the film through the types of trailers that were held back then. And then when the actual film was released, Chinese theatre in LA and the rest of the world, it impacted pop culture and life as we know it, I would say. I'd go as far as life. But no, I did not know what was everything was called. This is something that when you experience and you just really invest in it, you just start gaining momentum from that point. So I actually, to this day, I wouldn't say I'm a hardcore, detailed Star Wars person. I couldn't answer a lot of trivia questions. Let me tell you, I could not answer a lot of trivia questions. I can answer a number of them. I do know a lot of aspects to Star Wars, but I'm not this, Star Wars genius. I just love Star Wars. And I've done a lot of things with Star Wars, and I love movies, and I've done a lot of things with movies. I love creativity, and I've done a lot of things with creativity. It's just a passion that's built up in me since, 1977. So, to answer that question, I did not know what everything was called. Anyway, so the last question from Michael from Werribee South: where, how did they film Star Wars, and was it green screen? I'm going to guess this question is about the original Star Wars, but let me quickly answer this question. Not quickly answer it, sort of give a basic version of the answer. The original trilogy, that was A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, was filmed mainly on location. Mainly. I don't think they even used green screen. I think the only green screen they used were for like the spaceships and planets and stuff like that. But when it's with the actors, it was on location. It was in Tunisia. They filmed in London. They filmed in LA. They filmed in the car lot of LA. The Death Star in there. With the prequels, most of it, I'd say pretty much all of it, but most of it, I would say, was filmed in Australia, Sydney, Australia, close to where this show is being broadcast, Melbourne. We are about an hour flight to Sydney from here. So the prequels, it's 1, 2, 3. That's Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith was filmed pretty much in Australia. And then the sequel trilogy, which was The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, and The Rise of Skywalker, it was refilmed in many locations. Like it was refilmed in Tunisia. There was a lot of American shots there. There was some London. It was a bit scattered at that point. So there was a number of places. But definitely the prequels had a lot of green screen. In fact, a large proportion, I would say 80% of that film is green screen. Could be pushing it, but that's what I will say. And I would say in the sequel trilogy, the demand from the fans really wanted the practicality of sets and practical creatures and everything like that. So the push to have less CGI was there. Definitely in the spaceship scenes and the planets and stuff like that. So there was probably a much reduced green screen look or blue screen look in the sequel trilogy. That was 7, 8, 9. But 1, 2, and 3 was heavy green screen, or sometimes I'd say blue screen. I think I saw in the featurettes, if you look at those in the original DVDs, or even on Disney Plus if they have them on there. Even in YouTube you can find the making ofs. And that's pretty much the show for today. And I suppose until next time, my friends, keep rocking.